But now, let's switch topics a little bit. We know that startups love solving problems, but sometimes we also know that we as startuppers love to come up with the problems to solve, right? So do we really need, for example, another AI-powered toothbrush or something like that?
Yeah. I would. But anyway, we're going to switch gears a little bit and move on to our next speaker. By the way, Dan is so cool. I want him to be my friend. But now let's welcome to the stage another amazing speaker, and her name is Tayeh. She is here to help us separate real problems from the noise. She's a human-centered innovator, a social impact leader, and it really seems like she cares not only about money, but also about what else goes into a business. Kind of also what Dan said. It's also a lot about people and having fun. And also, what I took away before I introduced CJ, we entrepreneurs are delusionally positive.
Oh, yeah.
And that really resonated with me. I was like, oh my God, I feel seen and heard.
When Ben said that we think that we can do everything, I was like, of course,
yeah, of course.
That's
duh. But now, let's welcome Tayeh. Let's sit in, listen in, and learn how to solve problems that actually matter. CJ, welcome on the stage. Woo!
Oh my God, I got some high fives. Hi everyone. Let's wait till it comes on the screen. Okay, hi, I'm CJ. And this is Defining Problems That Matter. I'm going to introduce myself super quickly so that you believe kind of something that I say. I am the lead of Zebras Unite London chapter. We're a founder-led, cooperatively owned movement creating culture, capital, and community for the new economy. That's a really complex way of saying we're a community of impact founders and funders. I'm also the founder of a tech company called Flank Digital. We are building AI-powered conflict resolution tools to help you fight better with your friends, family, and colleagues. And I can see the kind of graphics have fucked up a bit there. I'm also the trustee of Shift Design, which is a people-centered social change charity which has been built to shift us towards a system that works. So super quickly, here are some things that I've done. I started my career in human rights law. I worked for the Australian government, rewriting laws of Pacific Island countries. I then went up to Far North Queensland, worked with Indigenous people on intellectual property and cultural rights. I then left that behind, went back to Sydney to launch Deliveroo in Australia. I was head of marketing for a little while. Did growth at eBay. People, while I was in tech, told me that I was a bit too creative for that world, so I moved into the creative industries and worked in advertising for a while as a brand strategist. That was very creative, but a bit too superficial, so I moved to London to specialize in social innovation. And I've worked in health inequalities, I've worked in homelessness and mental health in particular. So this morning, or this afternoon, I don't know quite what on time we're on, we're going to talk about problems which are the foundations of not only startups, but all businesses. Businesses love to frame their challenges like problems to be solved. When I was in advertising, people used to say, oh, we need to write a brief. We have a big problem. People aren't eating enough crisps. I was like, is that a real problem? For somebody, maybe, but not for the actual people that are not eating enough crisps. So we're going to talk about problems as the foundation of a startup's narrative and business. This is a reminder to remind you that this is not a Harry Styles concert, so I won't be giving any advice, particularly dating advice, but I will be sharing my perspective. So let's begin. I was sitting by the canal in London, where I live sometimes, and I was thinking about what to say today. was a very sunny, lovely winter's day, and 3 young and fun Gen Zs came paddling past in a kayak or a canoe or something like that. And 2 of them were rowing the boat, but one of them, the girl in the middle, was there with one of those claws. You know those claws that you sometimes, plastic claws, you sometimes see them on American sitcoms where like the handsome but slightly kind of misguided teenager gets sentenced to like picking up trash from the highway. These claws that people use to pick up trash. She was holding one of these and she was like fishing out rubbish from the canal. And people around us started getting really excited. They were like, "Oh, what are you doing? I want to do this. I want to get in a boat really early in the morning on a very cold London day and pick out trash from the water. I want to do it with my daughter and my friends." People got really excited. And there was a lot of commotion. People started like shouting and saying, "Oh, you've missed a spot. There's a plastic bag flying just gliding behind you. Try and get it." People got really involved. And I remember looking at this scene and just being like, bloody hell, don't we have drones to do this yet? So I started thinking about, okay, why don't we have drones to do this trash collection in the canal in London on a bright and sunny winter's day? And I thought, okay, what are the big kind of heavyweights of Silicon Valley? What would they say? These very smart, rich men that seem to define the problems of our era. Michael Siebel, the hair on fire guy, what would he say about this? Is this a hair on fire problem? I mean, you've got Gen Zs in a boat very early in the morning. Maybe it is a hair on fire problem. What would Mark Andreessen say, scratching his big old brain? Mark Andreessen loves the eros of a train or a plane. I'm sure he'd love a trash collection drone. Here are some more big thinkers on an AI. Ted Chiang, science fiction writer. He talks about how technology cannot solve the world's most important problems, and actually these are problems of political will rather than technological problems. And then you've got Arne Næss, the famous Norwegian philosopher, who talks about deep ecology compared to shallow ecology. And he would probably say this is a very human-centric, superficial way of addressing the fundamental ways that humans organize themselves in relation to nature. So I went back to the problem-solving techniques and the kind of analysis that we used to do at innovation class, and I used the 5 whys that a guy at Toyota pioneered. I said, okay, there's pollution in the canal. Why is that? Well, because people didn't put rubbish in the bin. Why is that? Well, because there aren't enough bins. Why? Because the council didn't have the money. Why is that? Well, because money was prioritized for something else. Why? Well, because public budgets have been slashed. And then I thought, okay, well, there's another way of seeing this shortly. There's infinitely amounts of times you can do this. Okay, so there's pollution in the canal. Why? Because rubbish has been put in overflowing bins. Why? Because bins weren't collected. Why? Because the council allocated money poorly. Why? Because local government workers lack skills. Why is that? Oh, because we don't pay them enough, and that means, like, how could we expect anything from them? And then I thought, well, no, this is all wrong, because pollution in the canal doesn't just relate to the trash, it relates to industrial waste and sewage waste as well, so we have to go back to the very start. And then I thought, well, okay, what if we paused in asking why for a second, and we started asking and? There's pollution in the canal, and people are getting together to pick it up. And they're exercising outdoors, and they're spending time with their friends, and they're modeling pro-social behavior. So we're all encouraged to pick up rubbish, and they're getting the health benefits of giving back. So now I was really confused. I mean, this is way too complex. There's obviously like bits and pieces where we could say, I'm going to build a tech platform for that. I'm going to build a drone for that. But how on earth do we know what to do? What do we do? So being the economics history nerd that I kind of am, I'm going to take us back to the 1960s. And the 1960s was a time when some magical things happened. We had the microwave, which was invented in the 1950s, become quite popular in the 1960s. We had other great conveniences, the television, which was invented in the 1920s, became really popular in the 60s. You also had the USSR space race. Both countries sent people up into space, landed on the moon, created lots of technology to get there. And what you also had is the development of advertising, because consumer economies became super popular. And what we had in the rise of consumers was also this drive to perfection, optimization of the human, how to be fitter, a better housewife, a better employee, and also a drive to convenience, how to spend less effort doing the things that are required. You had the emergence in the 60s of this idea called the technological fix. So people start using the word technology in a way that implies that we believe that it can fix the most important problems of the age. It was pioneered by this guy called Dr. Alvin Weinberg, who was an engineer himself, but he also was quite close to government. And the technological fix is the idea and the belief that the technological innovations that we are creating could solve any social issue. But this guy wasn't without opposition, even though he was very popular. Around the same time, you had this guy called Ernst Schumacher, who's the author of Small is Beautiful, if any of you want to look him up. He said that there's this idea of appropriate tech. He was looking at vast industrialization, the big changes that were sort of seeming to happen in the world, and he was saying, well, technology should be designed in ways that would promote health, beauty, and permanence. He said, technology should not be regarded only as a means to an immediate end. It must be evaluated in terms of its contribution to a process or activity, beneficial not only to its immediate users, but also to society at large. So here we have a fundamental critique of whether tech can solve the most important problems in our world. And we also have a challenge to evaluate those problems in a broad and wide way, thinking about lots of perspectives in society, rather than the way that we define problems, which is in a very narrow and focused way. There's another really famous guy that wrote about this, and his name is David Graeber, the late anarchist anthropologist. He talks about this era as an era where we saw the rise of techno-optimism, but actually the fall in technological progress. So in the 60s and 70s, the number of patents that were created the growth rates went down. The number of new research papers went down. The number of new books went down. Why is that? He talks about this era as a time when engineers were rising as the people that were most equipped to define the problems of our era. But that was also at the fall of everyone else. This was also a time when financialization really started happening. So financial markets tended to grow as a portion of the economy. And also they started to take more control over other sections of the economy. And tax rates started going down. And tax rates, we always think of tax rates as like, oh, okay, it's like, I don't want to pay that much tax to the government. But tax rates are not just about what money we put in government coffers. It's also about how much money the government has to put back and redistribute and reallocate back into our communities, into our societies, to define markets that perhaps we're not going to pay for in privatized markets. So this led to the privatization of problem solving, this great distortion, which means that we have so much difficulty defining and working on problems that really matter in our society. And nothing symbolizes the extremities of this more than these two guys, right? Nothing. So now I'm going to talk about a framework that's been designed by a couple of brilliant women in the US, which helps us to really kind of understand perhaps how far we've gone with these distortions. And this is called the unicorn versus zebra framework. Does anyone know what a unicorn is? I'm sure we all know what a unicorn is. I don't know whether anyone's heard of a zebra company before, but I'm going to explain briefly what it is. So unicorns work on technological problems. Well, they might work on social problems, but social problems become technological problems when you're in a unicorn. The purpose is exponential growth, and often that exponential growth happens because we extract money from communities and from people and from local businesses. This is really in contrast to, say, a zebra model where we want to keep the problems as real. We want to keep them as complex and as diverse as they could possibly be. They're sometimes called wicked problems, but I'm not sure that that's such a helpful term. Regenerative growth is a really simple way of saying that we don't only care about the money that we take out of an economy, but we care about the money that we put in. So we care about how much we pay our workers at every level of the hierarchy. We care about the communities that we operate within, and we care about the ecosystem around us that allows us to do business. The worldview of a unicorn is win-lose, and the worldview of a zebra is collaborative. It's win-win. So you can see that there's many features, if we go down the list, of how unicorns and the kind of pressure to build unicorns really shapes the tools we want to use, the problems that we look for, and our value system going in when we're developing tech companies that we propose are doing a good thing in the world. The zebra kind of construct is a construct in itself. It's very hard to build a zebra. It's extremely hard to build a zebra, particularly when we don't have the financial instruments in order to fund zebras. They often stay very small. We often don't have the kind of social values that are kind of popular and common enough that we can rely on to really allow zebra models to live and survive and grow. And so we're in this kind of phase where actually the dominant paradigm is where everyone's trying to be a unicorn, and if you're trying to be a zebra, there's really not that much for you. So now we're going to do takeaways. This is an old meme that I've just been dying to use since my Deliveroo days. Takeaways are that problem solving is super complex. I mean, just in 1 minute, we looked at all the different ways that you could analyze a problem that I don't even claim to understand. It involves a combination of many different knowledges, not just engineering. We also need to recognize that we live in a techno-optimistic paradigm where there's probably a disproportionate belief that tech alone can get us out of the huge problems that our world is facing today. Problems like climate change, problems like inequality, it's not going to be resolved by tech alone. And this paradigm causes distortionary effects, where we find ourselves working on stuff where we really have to question whether it's doing good in the world, or whether it's actually taking more than it's putting back. The zebra-unicorn dialectic paradigm is one that we can use in order to kind of get better guidance on this topic. And if anyone's more interested in talking about this, come speak to me after. Yeah, that's all from me.
Thank you.
Yes, and you can give this back to the
Okay.
volunteers. Yes. That was incredible. Thank you, CJ. Really makes you think about
Yeah.
what's important and what's not. But
And it even got us discussing quietly that, but would you still prefer a unicorn or a zebra?
Right.
It's like a hard question to answer.
yeah,
Maybe.
we didn't come to a conclusion between us either. It's really a topic for discussion here.